They say every passenger on a plane carries a story, but no one expected the quiet janitor in seat 12F, traveling with a worn backpack and his sleeping little daughter, to be the men who would bring an entire F-22 squadron to attention. When the flight attendant dismissed him, when the businessman mocked him, when everyone ignored him, nobody knew that the world once knew him by a call sign that made enemies tremble and allies stand a little taller. But they would learn. And it would happen at 34,000 feet. The plane was already boarding when Ayan Malik, a single father in his mid-30s, stepped inside with his little daughter Lena, her tiny arms wrapped around his neck. Ayan wore faded jeans, a cheap jacket, and shoes with soles thinning from years of cleaning night shifts. Passengers glanced at him and then quickly looked away, as though his presence made the air heavier. He didn't blame them. Life had a way of humbling a man until he blended into the background like a shadow. Seat 12F, a window seat, felt like a small victory. His daughter loved windows. She said they made the sky look soft. The businessman beside him sighed loudly when Ayan settled down. "Careful," the man muttered, adjusting his expensive watch. "Try not to bump me." Ayan apologized quietly. Lena tugged her father's sleeve. "Baba, look. Clouds." Her excitement warmed him, but the people around them rolled their eyes. A flight attendant approached, the kind who smiled for work but not for people. "Sir," she said briskly, "you'll need to store that old backpack properly. And please keep your daughter from leaning on the window during takeoff." Ayan nodded. "Of course. Sorry." His voice was soft. A voice trained to avoid conflict, but it wasn't always that way. He once had a voice that commanded entire air units, and silence. A voice that cut through chaos in combat zones. A voice that carried a call sign that no one had spoken in years. The plane lifted off, and Ayan held Lena's hand as she drifted to sleep. He stared at her small face and felt a familiar ache. He had promised her mother he would raise their daughter with love and safety. He had failed once, failed to save the woman he loved when the world he lived in demanded sacrifice after sacrifice. He left his military career after that day, walking away from medals, rankings, respect, and disappearing into a quiet civilian life as a janitor. It felt like the only punishment he could bear, but fate was not done with him. 2 hours into the flight, an unexpected tremor shook the aircraft. Passengers murmured nervously. A moment later, the captain's voice came through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to restricted airspace ahead, we are being redirected. Please remain calm." The businessman beside Ayan scoffed. "Restricted airspace? What nonsense. I have meetings to attend." Another tremor. Stronger this time, then static, then silence. Something was wrong. Ayan felt it in his bones, the way only someone who once lived in the skies could feel danger before it formed a shape. Lena stirred. "Baba, what's happening?" "Nothing, sweetheart. Just a bit of rough air." He smiled to comfort her, but his heart tightened. Instinct whispered that this was no minor turbulence. Then, through the window, he saw it. A shadow cutting through the clouds, fast, sleek, unmistakable. An F-22 Raptor, not 1.2.3. Flying dangerously close to the commercial plane. Gasps filled the cabin. The flight attendant nearly dropped her service tray. "Why are they here?" someone yelled. The businessman leaned over Ayan to look. "This is insane." But Ayan wasn't shocked. He recognized the formation. He recognized the flight pattern. He recognized the silent message between aircraft. These weren't attackers, they were searching for a signal. A call sign. One that the world believed was gone forever. Passengers panicked as the F-22s tightened formation around the aircraft. The captain's voice returned, strained and uneasy. We have been asked to confirm if we have a passenger named." Static interrupted, then the name came through, broken but unmistakable. "Call sign Falcon-One." The cabin erupted in confusion. "Who is Falcon-One? Is this a threat? What kind of person is on this plane?" The businessman folded his arms and sneered at Ayan. "Probably some criminal on the no-fly list." Ayan swallowed hard. He had hoped this day would never come. Lena looked up at him. "Baba. What's Falcon-One?" He brushed her hair back gently. "A name I used, a long time ago." The flight attendant hurried down the aisle, her face pale. "Excuse me, sir. Do you know anything about that call sign?" Ayan didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his worn backpack, the one she had mocked earlier, and pulled out a small, metal identification tag. Scratched. Old. But still carrying weight. He handed it to her. She froze, her eyes widened. She stared at the name engraved beneath the emblem of an elite squadron. Falcon-One. Lieutenant Ayan Malik. F-22 Program, Elite Command Division. Her breath hitched. You're him. Ayan nodded slowly. The cabin fell silent as she walked the ID to the cockpit. Moments later, the captain asked Ayan to join them. The businessman scoffed. Unbelievable. They're letting the janitor up front. Another passenger corrected him. He's not just a janitor. But Ayan didn't care what anyone thought, not anymore. He only cared about keeping his daughter calm. He carried Lena as he walked toward the cockpit. When he stepped inside, the captain turned, removed his hat, and saluted him. Sir, we've been trying to reach you for years. Ayan stood in stunned disbelief. One of the F-22 pilots came through audio transmission. Falcon-One, is that really you, sir? Ayan lifted the headset. His voice trembled as he spoke. Yes. It's me. There was silence. Then, welcome home, Commander. We're escorting you safely. It's an honor. The cockpit crew stared, emotional and speechless. The F-22 squadron outside tilted their wings simultaneously, a full air salute. A gesture reserved only for the most respected of pilots. Down in the cabin, passengers pressed against windows, witnessing the extraordinary tribute being given to the quiet men in seat 12F, the men they had judged, ignored, dismissed. The businessman's face flushed with shame. Ayan returned to his seat, holding Lena close. She whispered, Baba, they saluted you. He kissed her forehead. They saluted who I used to be. But everything I am now is because of you. When the plane finally landed, the F-22 pilots waited on the runway. They stood in a line, helmets under their arms, and saluted as Ayan descended the stairs with his daughter. He didn't stand taller because they saluted him. He stood taller because his daughter held his hand with pride. A journalist nearby whispered, why would an elite squadron honor a janitor? A pilot replied softly, because heroes don't retire. They just love quieter. Ayan looked back at the plane, at the people who now saw him differently, and at the sky that once defined him. But his heart felt lighter than it had in years. He was Falcon-One, but he was also a father, a survivor, a man rebuilding his life from the ashes, and in that moment, he realized the truth. Some salutes aren't for rank or reputation. Some salutes are for character, for sacrifice, for the battles no one else sees. Ayan walked forward with Lena in his arms, not as a forgotten hero, but as a man finally seen.